Emily Walker grew up under the crushing weight of secrets and losses that marked every corner of her childhood. Her father, a once respected investment banker in Boston, was imprisoned for financial fraud, leaving behind a trail of debts and rumors that threatened to destroy what little remained of her family. Her mother vanished mysteriously shortly after the scandal broke, wrapped in a silence that was never explained, leaving an open wound that Emily would carry with her for years. At 18, exhausted and directionless, she fled from that dark past to Las Vegas, where survival depended on courage and cunning. In Vegas, Emily found work as a waitress at the Mirage Palace, an exclusive underground casino frequented by international magnates whose names resonated throughout the world. Each night she served drinks amid bets worth more than money. They were worth lives and destinies. In that atmosphere charged with tension, where power and ambition intertwined with risk, she dreamed of an opportunity that would allow her to escape poverty and regain her lost dignity. "Another bourbon for the gentleman at table 7, she told the bartender, balancing a tray of empty glasses. The casino buzzed with the sounds of clinking chips and hushed conversations in multiple languages. "You're new here," remarked Jackson, the veteran bartender, his eyes following her gaze toward the private room. "Word of advice? Don't even think about it." "Think about what?" Emily asked, pretending innocence. "The high-stakes room, that's where dreams go to die," he said, sliding the bourbon across the counter. "Or sometimes worse, they come true." Emily had noticed the room before, accessed through velvet curtains guarded by men in impeccable suits. Only the wealthiest patrons ever passed through those curtains, emerging hours later with expressions that told stories of fortunes won or lost. After 3 months of working double shifts, Emily had saved enough to afford a small apartment off the Strip. The dingy one-bedroom wasn't much, but it was hers, a step toward rebuilding her life. Yet every night as she counted her tips, she calculated how long it would take to truly start over. At this rate, she'd be 40 before she could afford college tuition or start a legitimate business. "Emily," called Vanessa, the floor manager, snapping her from her thoughts. "Mr. Mitchell wants you specifically for the private salon tonight." Emily's pulse quickened. Richard Mitchell owned the Mirage Palace and reportedly half of Las Vegas. A reclusive figure rarely seen on the main floor, his requests were considered commands. "Me? Why?" Emily asked, nervously adjusting her uniform. "He says you have a captivating presence. Don't ask questions, just be at the diamond room at midnight," Vanessa said, lowering her voice. "And Emily, wear this." She handed over a sleek black dress with a small gold pin shaped like a dice. The diamond room was unlike anything Emily had experienced. While the main casino floor cultivated a calculated extravagance, this room embodied true luxury. 9 individuals sat around a large oval table, their wealth evident in their relaxed postures rather than flashy displays. Emily recognized tech, billionaires, real estate moguls, and foreign dignitaries from news headlines. At the head of the table sat a man whose presence commanded the room without effort. Alexander Reed, heir to the Reed Energy Empire and one of the wealthiest men in America, observed the table from his wheelchair. A helicopter accident 3 years ago had left him paraplegic, but his piercing grey eyes and the authoritative set of his shoulders made it clear his physical limitations hadn't diminished his power. "Gentleman and lady," he acknowledged the sole female player, a Russian heiress. "Tonight we play without limits." His voice was deep and smooth with a hint of a southern accent. "And tonight we welcome a special guest." All eyes turned to Emily, who stood frozen by the entrance. "Miss Walker will be joining our game," Alexander announced, causing murmurs around the table. "Mr. Mitchell speaks highly of your intuition." Emily blinked in confusion. I'm just here to serve drinks," she stammered. Alexander's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Not tonight. Tonight, you're a player. I don't have the funds to—" "I'm staking you," Mitchell interjected from a corner of the room Emily hadn't noticed him occupying. "Consider it an investment." Before she could protest further, she found herself seated at the table, chips worth more than her yearly salary stacked before her. The game was simple in rules but complex in strategy, a modified poker variant that removed luck almost entirely from the equation. For the first hour, Emily played cautiously, winning small pots and losing others. She noticed Alexander watching, her not with the predatory assessment she was accustomed to from men in power, but with genuine curiosity. "You play like someone with something to lose," he commented during a shuffle. "That's rare at this table." "Everyone has something to lose," Emily replied. "Not here. These people," he gestured around the table, "they play with disposable wealth. You play with survival instinct." As the night progressed, players dropped out, leaving only Emily and Alexander at the table. The stakes had risen astronomically, and Emily found herself playing with house money after her initial stake had multiplied tenfold. "Final hand," Alexander announced. "All or nothing." The cards were dealt. Emily studied her hand, strong, but not unbeatable. Across the table, Alexander's expression revealed nothing. "Before we show our cards," Alexander said, "I'd like to propose an alternative wager." Emily raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "If you win, you take everything on the table, plus a position in my company with a salary that would solve your financial concerns permanently." The offer was tempting, life-changing. "And if I lose?" Alexander leaned forward. "If you lose, you sign a contract to work exclusively for me for 30 days, at my estate in Sedona." Emily's breath caught. "As what?" "That's part of the wager. You would learn your duties after arriving." Mitchell stepped forward. "Ms. Walker, you don't have to—" "I accept," Emily interrupted, her heart pounding. Something in Alexander's eyes told her this wasn't about exploitation. This was about something else entirely. She laid down her cards, a straight flush, impressive by any standard. Alexander smiled faintly and revealed his hand. Royal flush. The room fell silent. "The contract," Alexander said, sliding a document across the table, "is straightforward. 30 days. No communication with the outside world. Complete compliance with my instructions." Emily's hand trembled as she took the pen offered to her. Everything in her screamed to walk away, but another voice, the one that had kept her alive since her mother's disappearance, told her this was an opportunity. For what, she wasn't sure. "Why me?" she asked, pen hovering over the signature line. "Because you play to win even when you have nothing," Alexander replied. "That's rare." Emily signed the contract, feeling as though she'd just altered the course of her life irreversibly. "My car will collect you tomorrow at noon," Alexander said, his expression unreadable. "Pack lightly. Everything you need will be provided." As Emily left the diamond room that night, Mitchell caught her arm. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he whispered urgently. "Created an opportunity," she replied, with more confidence than she felt. "Alexander Reed doesn't make offers like this ever. Whatever game he's playing, it's not the one you think." Emily pulled her arm free. "Maybe not, but for once I'm not just serving the players, I am one." Back in her apartment, Emily packed her few possessions into a worn suitcase, wondering what awaited her in Arizona. She'd researched Alexander. Read online, his company's philanthropic initiatives contradicted the ruthless business tactics that had expanded Reed Energy from oil into sustainable technologies. His accident had removed him from public life almost entirely, leading to speculation about his condition and mental state. As dawn broke over the Las Vegas skyline, Emily stood at her window watching the city lights dim against the rising sun. She had sold 30 days of her freedom to a man she barely knew, driven by desperation and an inexplicable intuition that this strange wager might lead to answers about her own past. What she couldn't know was that Alexander Reed had chosen her for reasons that extended far beyond a poker game, reasons connected to the very disappearance that had shattered her family years ago. The private jet touched down at Sedona Airport just as the afternoon sun cast the famous red rocks in a fiery glow. Emily had never flown private before, and the luxury of the experience had done little to calm her nerves. The driver who met her at the tarmac was silent during the 40-minute drive through winding desert roads, eventually turning onto a private, access road that led to massive iron gates embedded in the natural rock formations. As they passed through the gates, Emily caught her first glimpse of the Reed estate, a sprawling modernist structure of white marble and glass that seemed to emerge organically from the red landscape. Built into the side of a mesa, the mansion offered panoramic views of the vast desert while remaining invisible from public vantage points. "Mr. Reed is expecting you in the main living area," the driver informed her, the first words he'd spoken since her arrival. Emily was led through a series of minimalist corridors with soaring ceilings until she reached an expansive room with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the desert. Alexander Reed sat in his wheelchair, silhouetted against the dramatic landscape, reviewing documents on a sleek tablet. "Ms. Walker," he acknowledged without turning around. "Welcome to Sedona." "Mr. Reed," Emily replied, attempting to keep her voice steady. "Your home is impressive." "It's a cage, albeit a beautiful one," he said, finally turning to face her. In the natural light, Emily noticed details she'd missed in the dim casino. The slight silver at his temples despite being only in his mid-30s, the controlled strength in his shoulders and arms, compensating for his paralyzed lower body. Like all cages, one grows accustomed to it. He gestured to a chair positioned across from him. "Please sit. We should discuss the terms of your stay." Emily sat reluctantly, her suitcase still clutched in her hand like a shield. "You'll have your own wing of the house," Alexander explained, his tone businesslike. "It includes a bedroom suite, private bathroom, and sitting area. You'll have access to the pool, library, and gardens. The rest of the house requires my explicit permission to enter." "And what exactly will I be doing here?" Emily asked directly. A faint smile crossed Alexander's face. "You'll be my companion." "Companion," Emily repeated skeptically. "That's deliberately vague." "Deliberately, yes." Alexander's grey eyes held hers steadily. "You'll attend business, meetings with me, join me for meals, and engage in conversation when requested. Beyond that, your time is your own, though you cannot leave the property without my knowledge and approval." Emily frowned. "That sounds like I'm both an employee and a prisoner." "An accurate assessment. The distinction between the two often depends merely on perspective." He pressed a button on his wheelchair and a housemaid appeared almost instantly. "Sophia will show you to your quarters. Dinner is at 7. Please dress appropriately. You'll find suitable clothing in your closet." Before Emily could respond, Alexander had turned back to the windows, dismissing her presence entirely. The east wing of the mansion was as luxurious as it was isolating. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the breathtaking desert landscape, but Emily quickly discovered they were made of bulletproof glass and couldn't be opened. The closet contained designer clothing in exactly her size, an unsettling detail that suggested significant research had been conducted before their casino encounter. "How does he know my measurements?" Emily asked Sophia, who was unpacking. Emily's meager possessions. "Mr. Reed is thorough, Miss Walker," the maid replied without meeting her eyes. "Is there anything specific you require for your comfort?" "My freedom?" Emily said sarcastically. Sophia's expression remained carefully neutral. "I'll inform Mr. Reed you're settled in. Dinner is served promptly at 7 in the main dining room." Left alone, Emily explored her new prison. Despite the luxury surrounding her, she felt a growing sense of unease. The contract she'd signed suddenly seemed like the most foolish decision of her life. She tried the door to her wing and found it unlocked. At least she wasn't physically confined to her rooms. Venturing into the main house, Emily discovered a library that would have impressed any university. 3 stories of books surrounded a central spiral staircase, with rolling ladders providing access to the highest shelves. At a mahogany desk by the window sat a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and round spectacles. "You must be Ms. Walker," he said, rising from his chair. "I'm Dr. James Harrison, Mr. Reed's personal physician and friend." "Is he sick?" Emily asked, suddenly curious about the man who had essentially purchased her time. Dr. Harrison's expression revealed nothing. "Alexander's health is private. I'm here to ensure his physical therapy continues as scheduled." He gestured to the books surrounding them. "Feel free to borrow anything that interests you. Alexander rarely visits the library anymore." "Why not?" too many memories, I expect, Dr. Harrison replied cryptically. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. As 7 o'clock approached, Emily selected a simple black dress from the provided wardrobe and made her way to the dining room. Alexander was already seated at one end of a table that could comfortably seat 20. "You're punctual," he observed, as a staff member pulled out a chair for her at the opposite end. "A quality I appreciate." "Hard to be late when there's nowhere." "Tells to go," Emily replied. The corner of Alexander's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "True enough." Wine. Dinner proceeded in uncomfortable silence until the main course arrived, a perfectly prepared steak that Emily barely tasted. "You haven't asked why you're here," Alexander noted, studying her from across the expanse of polished wood. "I assumed." "You tell me when you were ready," Emily responded, meeting his gaze directly. "Games of power aren't new to me, Mr. Reed." "Alexander," he corrected, "if we're to spend 30 days together, formality seems unnecessary." "Fine, Alexander, what do you want from me?" He set down his knife and fork with deliberate precision. "Honesty, that's the first requirement." "I can be honest," Emily said, "starting with the fact that this whole situation is bizarre." "Perhaps," he conceded, "but conventional methods have failed me." "Methods for what?" Alexander took a sip of wine before answering. "I need someone who can move in certain circles undetected. Someone intelligent enough to understand complex situations, but unknown enough to avoid recognition." Emily frowned. "That sounds suspiciously like you want me to spy for you." "Not spying. Investigating." Alexander's expression darkened. "There are discrepancies in some of my corporate holdings. Transactions that don't align with my directives. People who shouldn't have access gaining it through channels I can't identify. And you think I can help with that? How exactly? I'm a cocktail waitress, not a corporate investigator." "You're much more than a cocktail waitress, Emily Walker," Alexander said with unexpected intensity. "Your father was Jonathan Walker, convicted of orchestrating one of the most sophisticated financial frauds in recent history. Before his downfall, he was considered a financial genius." Emily stiffened. "You researched me?" "Thoroughly." "Your mother, Caroline Walker, disappeared 3 months after your father's sentencing. No body was ever found, no trail to follow. You've been on your own since you were 16, using various names, working jobs that required minimal background checks." The casual recitation of her life's tragedies felt like a physical blow. "That doesn't explain why I'm here." "You survived," Alexander said simply. "More than that, you developed skills most people in your situation wouldn't. Observation, adaptability, the ability to read people and situations quickly. Those are valuable traits." "So valuable you'd force me into servitude." Alexander's eyebrows rose. "Force? You signed the contract willingly." "Under duress." "Under ambition," he corrected. "I watched you at the poker table. You calculated risks with precision. You knew exactly what you were doing." Emily pushed her plate away, appetite gone. "What happens if I refuse to help with your corporate investigation?" "Then you spend 30 days in luxurious boredom, and we part ways with the agreed-upon settlement." Alexander's voice was cool. "But I suspect your curiosity won't allow that." He was right, and Emily hated that he knew it. "What makes you think I won't steal whatever information I find and use it against you?" Alexander smiled for the first time, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "That's precisely why I chose you. If the information is valuable enough to steal, it's valuable enough to find in the first place." After dinner, Alexander suggested they continue their conversation on the terrace. Night had fallen over the desert, revealing a canopy of stars brighter than any Emily had seen in her light-polluted city life. "Did you know the Navajo consider this land sacred?" Alexander said, as his wheelchair hummed softly along the marble pathway. "They believe certain landscapes hold power, doorways between worlds." "Do you believe that?" Emily asked, surprised by this philosophical turn. "I believe power exists in unexpected places," he replied, "in information, in silence, in patience." They reached the edge of the terrace, where the property seemed to merge with the vast darkness of the desert beyond. Security lights illuminated the immediate grounds, but beyond that the wilderness stretched untouched. "There's something you should understand about me," Alexander said after a long silence. "This chair isn't the prison most people assume it is. My real constraints are invisible. Obligations, expectations, family legacies I never asked for." "Is that supposed to make me sympathize with the billionaire who essentially bought a month of my life?" Emily asked, though the bitterness in her voice had softened. "No," Alexander replied. "It's context for what I'm about to share with you." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small photograph, handing it to Emily. The image showed a young boy standing beside Alexander, both smiling, both standing on their own 2 feet. "My brother Nathan," Alexander explained, his voice tight. "He died 4 years ago, a year before my accident. At least, that's the official story." Emily looked up sharply. "Official story?" "I have reason to believe Nathan is alive," Alexander said, his eyes reflecting the distant security lights, "and that his disappearance is connected to the financial irregularities in my company." "Why not go to the police?" Emily asked. Alexander's laugh was hollow. "The police declared the case closed. My family, specifically my father, accepted the ruling. Pursuing it further was deemed detrimental to company stability. So instead you're recruiting random cocktail waitresses through poker games." Emily handed the photograph back. "That seems desperate." "I am desperate," Alexander admitted, surprising her with his candor. "But not random. I chose you specifically because of your connection to the Mirage Palace." Emily's blood ran cold. "What connection?" "Your mother's last known location before her disappearance was a meeting at the Mirage Palace," Alexander said quietly. "With my father." The desert night suddenly felt much colder as Emily processed this information. "That's impossible. My mother didn't know anyone in Las Vegas. And yet credit card records show she checked into the Bellagio 3 days before she vanished. Security footage shows her entering the Mirage Palace on her second night in town." Alexander's expression was grim. "I believe our family tragedies are connected, Ms. Walker, and I believe you're the only person I can trust to help me uncover how." Back in her room that night, Emily sat by the window staring at the star-filled sky, her mind racing with questions. If Alexander was telling the truth, she had stumbled into something far more complex than she'd imagined. If he was lying, manipulating her with false connections to her mother's disappearance, then she was trapped with a dangerous man for the next 29 days. As she prepared for bed, Emily noticed a small envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a keycard and a handwritten note in elegant script. "Trust is earned, not commanded. This grants access to all areas. Use it wisely. A.R." The desert sunrise painted Alexander's study in hues of gold and amber as Emily reviewed the documents spread across the mahogany desk. After a week at the Reed estate, she had established a routine. Mornings spent examining financial records and correspondence related to both Reed Energy and the Mirage Palace. Afternoons accompanying Alexander to video conferences and business calls, and evenings engaged in conversations that grew increasingly personal. "Find anything interesting?" Alexander asked, entering the study with the quiet hum of his electric wheelchair. Despite the early hour, he was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his dark hair combed back from his forehead. Emily tapped her finger on a spreadsheet. "There's a pattern in these transactions. Quarterly payments to a shell company called Oasis Ventures. They're structured to look like legitimate consulting fees, but the amounts escalate precisely when Reed Energy announced new sustainable energy patents." Alexander maneuvered beside her, close enough that she could smell his subtle cologne. "Intellectual property theft disguised as business expenses," he murmured. "Clever." "It gets more interesting," Emily continued, ignoring the distracting proximity. "I cross-referenced the dates with the Mirage Palace's high-stakes game schedules. Each major payment coincides with a private poker tournament attended by your father." Alexander's jaw tightened. "My father claimed those games were networking opportunities for potential investors. Or they were exchanges," Emily suggested. "Information for money, with poker as the cover." Over the past week, Emily had discovered that Alexander's father, William Reed, had been grooming Nathan as his successor, channeling resources and attention to the younger son, despite Alexander's superior business acumen. After Nathan's reported death in a boating accident, a body never recovered, William had reluctantly placed Alexander in charge, only to become increasingly controlling and critical of his decisions. "Why didn't you tell me your father opposed your shift towards sustainable energy?" Emily asked, gathering the documents into organized piles. Alexander's expression darkened. "My father believes power comes from controlling scarce resources. Oil, gas, coal, his entire empire was built on commodities that are running out. My interest in solar and wind energy was seen as idealistic foolishness, until those technologies started making money," Emily noted. "Precisely. Then suddenly he wanted control of those divisions," Alexander acknowledged with a wry smile. "Family dynamics are rarely simple, Ms. Walker." "Emily," she corrected him. After days of inhabiting his world, formality seemed pointless. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the space between them, an acknowledgement of growing mutual respect. The tension that had characterized their early interactions had evolved into something more complex. "Emily," he repeated softly, "there's something I need to show you." Alexander led her through a section of the house she hadn't explored, past his private quarters to a reinforced door with both keypad and biometric security. Inside was a technological command center that wouldn't have looked out of place in a government intelligence facility. "My accident wasn't random," Alexander stated flatly, activating a wall of screens with a gesture. "The helicopter's mechanical failure was manufactured. Surveillance footage appeared on the central monitor, grainy images showing a maintenance worker tampering with a helicopter's tail rotor assembly." "You've been investigating all this time," Emily realized, studying the timestamps. 3 years of searching. 3 years of being one step behind, Alexander corrected. Until Nathan's watch washed up on a private beach in Malaysia 4 months ago. He pulled up another image, a luxury watch with distinctive engravings on its back panel, photographed on white sand. "This was my gift to him on his 25th birthday. Custom-made, one of a kind." The Malaysian police dismissed it as coincidental debris, but I know better. Emily's investigative instincts flickered to life. If Nathan is alive, who benefits from his supposed death? "My father consolidated control of several key subsidiaries after Nathan's accident," Alexander replied. "Divisions that had been promised to Nathan when he took over as CEO. But then you had your accident," Emily pointed out, "and your father had even more control." Alexander's expression remained neutral, but Emily caught the flicker of pain in his eyes. Yes, convenient timing. The implications hung in the air between them. If William Reed was willing to fake one son's death and potentially arrange an accident for the other, what lengths would he go to in protecting his secrets? "There's something else you should see," Alexander said, accessing a secure server. "Something I discovered last night after reviewing the information you've gathered." A new window opened, displaying financial transfers from offshore accounts to a familiar name, Jonathan Walker, Emily's father. "These payments began 3 months before your father's fraud case went public," Alexander explained gently. "Someone was funneling money to him, setting him up to take a fall." Emily sank into a nearby chair, her legs suddenly weak. "My father always maintained he was innocent, that he'd been framed. Nobody believed him." "I believe him," Alexander said quietly, "because the money came from the same shell company that's been siphoning funds from Reed Energy." The revelation struck Emily like a physical blow. Her father's insistence on his innocence, the mysterious circumstances of her mother's disappearance, and now this connection to Reed Energy, pieces of a puzzle she'd carried for years, were finally connecting. "Who controls Oasis Ventures?" she asked, struggling to maintain her composure. "That's where the trail goes cold," Alexander admitted. "The company exists in regulatory blind spots between international jurisdictions. On paper, it's owned by a series of trusts in the Cayman Islands." Emily's mind raced through possibilities. "We need access to the Mirage Palace's secure files, the real client list, not the public-facing one." "Impossible," Alexander said. Their security is— I know someone, Emily interrupted. Jackson, the head bartender. He's worked there for 20 years and handles private customer accounts. He keeps his own records as insurance. Alexander studied her with newfound appreciation. You've been planning this investigation long before you met me, haven't you? Emily met his gaze steadily. My mother didn't abandon me. Something happened to her, and it's connected to the Mirage Palace. I took that job for a reason. For the first time, Alexander reached out and touched her hand, a gentle contact that sent unexpected warmth through her arm. Then we have more in common than I realized. That evening, they dined on the terrace under the starlit sky. The formality of their earlier meals had given way to a comfortable familiarity. Emily had changed from business attire into a simple sundress, while Alexander had abandoned his suit jacket and tie. Tell me about your mother, Alexander requested as they shared a bottle of wine. Emily traced the rim of her glass, organizing memories she rarely allowed herself to revisit. She was brilliant, a mathematics professor specializing in statistical analysis. After my father's arrest, she became convinced his trading algorithm had been tampered with. An algorithm that could predict market fluctuations would be valuable, Alexander noted. Valuable enough to steal and frame my father for fraud, Emily agreed. The week before she disappeared, she told me she'd found a pattern, proof that could exonerate my father. Then she flew to Las Vegas and I never saw her again. Alexander's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry, Emily. What about your mother? Emily asked, deflecting the conversation away from painful terrain. Cancer took her when I was 12, Alexander replied. She was the counterbalance to my father's ambition, the moral compass of the family. And Nathan, what was he like? A fond smile crossed Alexander's face. Idealistic, compassionate, completely unsuited for the cutthroat world our father wanted him to dominate. He refilled their wine glasses. I protected him from the worst of our father's expectations. Perhaps I protected him too well. You think he wasn't prepared when things got dangerous, Emily suggested. I think he discovered something he wasn't equipped to handle alone. Alexander corrected, something about our father's business practices. The night deepened around them, the temperature dropping as it always did in the desert. Emily shivered slightly in her thin dress. Without comment, Alexander moved his wheelchair closer and draped his suit jacket around her shoulders. The gesture was unexpectedly intimate, and Emily found herself affected by both the warmth of the jacket and the proximity of its owner. Thank you, she said quietly, pulling the jacket closer. It smelled like him, sandalwood and something distinctly masculine. After Nathan disappeared, Alexander continued, his voice low and intense, I dedicated myself to uncovering the truth. Then the helicopter accident happened, and suddenly I was fighting just to regain my independence. Yet you never gave up searching, Emily observed. How could I? His grey eyes held hers. Some obligations transcend personal limitations. The desert night was silent around them, creating an illusion of isolation that made confidences easier to share. In this private bubble, Emily found herself trusting Alexander in a way she hadn't trusted anyone in years. When my mother disappeared, she admitted, I considered more permanent solutions to my grief. Alexander's expression showed understanding rather than pity. What stopped you? Anger, Emily replied honestly. The need to find answers, to make someone accountable. Anger is a powerful motivator, Alexander agreed. It got me through months of physical therapy when doctors said I'd never regain the function I have now. Is that why you built this place? As a recovery center? Alexander's laugh held no humor. I built it as a fortress, against my father's interference, against corporate enemies, against my own limitations. He gestured toward the dark expanse of desert. But even the strongest fortresses can become prisons. As the temperature continued to drop, they moved inside to the library. Emily had discovered it was Alexander's favorite room, despite Dr. Harrison's claim that he rarely visited it. The massive fireplace cast dancing shadows across the book-lined walls. Tomorrow I need to contact Jackson, Emily said, settling into one of the leather armchairs. He won't speak freely over monitored channels. I have a secure satellite phone, Alexander offered. Untraceable unless someone has NSA-level resources. Your father might, Emily pointed out. Alexander's smile was grim. Precisely why I had it custom-built by former intelligence operatives who have no connection to Reed Energy. As they discussed strategy for approaching Jackson, Emily began to appreciate Alexander's tactical mind. Behind the billionaire facade was a strategist who had been playing a dangerous game of chess with his father for years. Always careful, always several moves ahead. You should get some rest, Alexander suggested eventually, noticing Emily stifling a yawn. Tomorrow will require clear thinking. As Emily stood to leave, she realized she was still wearing his jacket. Oh, Keep it, Alexander said. The nights here can be cold. She hesitated, suddenly aware of the shifting dynamic between them. What had begun as a transaction, a lost poker bet leading to 30 days of service, had evolved into a partnership of equals united by parallel tragedies. Alexander, she said, pausing at the library door, if we find proof that your father is behind all this, the intellectual property theft, Nathan's disappearance, your accident, my father's framing, what then? His expression hardened with resolve. Then justice, regardless of the cost. Emily returned to her room with her mind racing. The investigation had taken a personal turn that complicated her emotional landscape. She found herself admiring Alexander's resilience, his intelligence, and most surprisingly, his capacity for vulnerability despite the armor he presented to the world. As she hung his jacket in her closet, something fell from the inner pocket, a small USB drive labeled only with the initials CW. Caroline Walker, her mother's initials. Emily's heart pounded as she stared at the tiny device in her palm. Alexander had access to information about her mother all along, information he hadn't shared. Trust, so newly established between them, suddenly felt fragile. What else was Alexander Reed keeping from her? Emily spent the night examining the contents of the USB drive, her emotions fluctuating between shock, anger, and vindication. The drive contained surveillance footage of her mother meeting with William Reed at the Mirage Palace, followed by another meeting with Richard Mitchell. Most crucially, it held a voice recording of her mother confronting William about the algorithm, theft, and her husband's framing. You won't get away with this, Caroline Walker's voice declared firmly in the recording. I've secured evidence of the code manipulation. Jonathan is innocent, and I can prove it. William Reed's response was chilling. Your evidence won't matter if you're not around to present it, Professor Walker. By dawn, Emily had reached two conclusions. Alexander had been withholding critical information, and her mother had likely been silenced because of what she knew. The question remained, why had Alexander chosen now to let this information fall into her hands? When she entered the dining room for breakfast, Alexander was already waiting. You found the drive, he stated without preamble, his grey eyes studying her reaction carefully. Emily remained standing, maintaining distance between them. How long have you had this? 3 weeks. It arrived in an unmarked package the day before I arranged our poker game. You've been manipulating me from the beginning, Emily accused, her voice tight with controlled anger. Alexander wheeled, his chair closer to her. Not manipulating, recruiting. I needed to know if I could trust you before sharing everything. Trust goes both ways, Emily countered. Why should I believe anything you say now? Because we're running out of time, Alexander replied gravely. My father is consolidating control of Reed Energy's board. Once he secures majority support, both the sustainable energy patents and all evidence of his crimes will disappear. Emily crossed her arms. And my mother? What happened to her? Alexander's expression softened with genuine regret. I don't know for certain, but the recording suggests she possessed evidence that could have exonerated your father and implicated mine. People have disappeared for less. The painful truth hung between them. Emily sank into a chair, absorbing the implications. Why didn't your father simply destroy the algorithm if it was causing so much trouble? Because it works, Alexander explained. With modifications, your father's algorithm has been predicting market fluctuations with 87% accuracy. That translates to billions in profit. The revelation stunned Emily. My father really did create something revolutionary. Something worth stealing, framing him for fraud and silencing your mother to protect, Alexander confirmed. Jackson confirmed this when you spoke with him yesterday. The high-stakes poker games were covers for intellectual property exchanges. Emily's mind raced through the implications. If we can prove the algorithm was stolen, we can prove your father was framed, Alexander finished, and potentially trace what happened to your mother. Their eyes met across the table, mutual purpose solidifying into resolve. We need access to the Mirage Palace's secure server room, Emily declared. Jackson said the original transaction records are stored offline. Alexander nodded. I've arranged transportation. We leave for Las Vegas in 3 hours. We? Emily raised an eyebrow. You're coming personally? This is my fight too, Alexander said firmly. My brother's disappearance, my accident, all connected to the same corruption. Besides, my father would never expect me to leave my fortress. The Mirage Palace looked different to Emily now, not as a workplace, but as the nexus of a conspiracy that had destroyed multiple lives. They arrived after midnight, using a service. Entrance Jackson had left accessible. The security room is on the 3rd floor, Emily whispered as they navigated the dimly lit corridor. Alexander moved silently beside her, his custom wheelchair designed for stealth operations. 4 guards rotate shifts, with a 10-minute window between changeovers. They reached the maintenance elevator without incident, using the key card Jackson had provided. As the elevator ascended, Alexander grasped Emily's hand. The unexpected contact sent warmth through her arm. Whatever happens, he said quietly, I want you to know I've come to respect you tremendously, Emily Walker. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Despite her lingering reservations about his selective truth-sharing, she couldn't deny the connection that had formed between them. Let's finish this, she replied, squeezing his hand briefly. Before the elevator doors opened, the 3rd floor housed the casino's administrative offices and security infrastructure. Using Jackson's intel, they navigated to a reinforced door marked server storage. Emily swiped the keycard and the lock disengaged with a soft click. Inside, racks of servers hummed in climate-controlled silence. Alexander moved directly to a workstation in the corner. Mitchell keeps the most sensitive data on an isolated system, he explained, connecting a specialized device to the computer. This will bypass security and copy the database without triggering alerts. How much time do we have? Emily asked, watching the door nervously. 8 minutes until the guard returns from his rounds. The download progressed methodically, the progress bar creeping forward as gigabytes of data transferred to Alexander's device. At 87%, a red warning flashed on the screen. Someone's accessing the security system remotely, Alexander said, fingers flying across the keyboard. They've detected the intrusion. Emily's heart raced. Can you finish the download? Yes, but we'll need another exit strategy. They'll lock down the elevator. The door burst open, revealing Richard Mitchell flanked by 2 security guards. His usually composed face was twisted with fury. I should have known, he spat, glaring at Alexander. William said you wouldn't. Let this go. Emily stepped protectively in front of Alexander. It's over, Mitchell. We have the proof, the algorithm theft, the laundered payments, everything. Mitchell's laugh was cold. Proof? Who exactly do you think controls the justice system in this town? His eyes hardened. Your mother thought evidence would save her, too. The casual confirmation of her worst fears struck Emily like a physical blow. What did you do to her? Nothing personal, Mitchell shrugged. Business requires certain sacrifices. William Reed doesn't tolerate loose ends. He gestured to the guards. Take them to my office. William will want to handle this personally. As the guards approached, Alexander activated something on his wheelchair. A high-pitched sound emanated from speakers concealed in the armrests. momentarily disorienting everyone in the room. In that instant of confusion, Emily grabbed the download device and Alexander produced a small taser from beneath his seat, incapacitating the nearest guard. "Run!" Alexander shouted, blocking Mitchell's path with his wheelchair. Emily hesitated, unwilling to leave him behind. "Trust me," Alexander insisted. "Get to the east stairwell. Go!" Emily fled through the door, clutching the device containing their evidence. Behind her, she heard scuffling and Mitchell's enraged voice. The corridor stretched before her, security alarms now blaring throughout the building. She reached the stairwell and descended rapidly, expecting pursuit at any moment. As she pushed through the exit to the alley, a black SUV screeched to a halt beside her. The window lowered, revealing Dr. Harrison at the wheel. "Get in," he ordered. Alexander activated the contingency plan. Emily climbed in, breathless. "We can't leave him." "He's taking another route," Harrison assured her, accelerating away from the casino. Alexander never enters a situation without multiple exit strategies. They drove to a private airstrip outside the city, where a sleek jet stood ready. Still no sign of Alexander. Emily paced the tarmac, anxiety mounting with each passing minute. "We need to go back," she insisted as 30 minutes stretched to 45. Harrison checked his watch for the 10th time. He said to wait exactly 1 hour, then proceed without him if necessary. "To where?" "Washington, D.C., Harrison replied. "Alexander has arranged a meeting with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the FBI. The evidence on that device will trigger investigations into both Reed Energy and the Mirage Palace." As the deadline approached, Emily made her decision. "I'm going back for him." Before she could act on this resolution, another vehicle approached the airstrip, a motorcycle, driven by a helmeted figure with a passenger clinging to the back. As they drew closer, Emily recognized Alexander's form, his arms wrapped around the driver's waist. The motorcycle stopped beside them, and the driver removed his helmet, revealing a face strikingly similar to Alexander's, though younger and unmarked by the strain of recent years. "Nathan," Harrison breathed in disbelief. Nathan Reed helped his brother from the motorcycle, supporting him as Alexander's legs, functional but weak from years of limited use, found their balance. "Sorry." "For the dramatic entrance," Alexander said, eyes finding Emily's. "My brother has always had a flair for theatrics." Emily stared in shock. "You can walk?" "Limited mobility," Alexander clarified, "a result of 3 years of secret physical therapy. My father believes my paralysis is complete, a misconception that's proven useful." Nathan stepped forward, extending his hand to Emily. "I've heard a lot about you, Ms. Walker. My brother said you were extraordinary. He wasn't exaggerating." Emily shook his hand automatically, her mind struggling to process this new development. "Where have you been all this time?" "In hiding," Nathan explained. "After I discovered documents linking our father to intellectual property theft and corporate espionage, I knew my life was in danger. The boating accident gave me the cover I needed to disappear and gather evidence." Alexander moved closer to Emily, steadier on his feet now. "Nathan contacted me 6 months ago. We've been building our case together, but we needed someone on the inside of the Mirage Palace, someone with a personal stake in exposing the truth. Me," Emily realized. "The poker game, the 30-day contract, it was all to get me involved in the investigation." "The contract was necessary protection," Alexander explained. "If anyone questioned your presence at my estate, there was a legal explanation." Harrison interrupted urgently. "We need to leave now. Mitchell will have alerted William by now." Within minutes, they were airborne. As the jet climbed into the night sky, Emily sat beside Alexander, processing everything that had transpired. "I'm sorry for the deception," he said quietly. "It was necessary to protect both you and the investigation." Emily studied his face, the face that had become increasingly dear to her over the past weeks. "You could have trusted me with the whole truth." "It wasn't about trust," Alexander replied. "It was about plausible deniability. If captured, you couldn't reveal what you didn't know. The logic was sound, but the emotional impact remained. What happens now?" Nathan, seated across from them, answered, "The evidence goes to the authorities. William Reed and Richard Mitchell face federal charges for fraud, money laundering, intellectual property theft, and potentially much worse once they investigate your mother's disappearance." "And Reed Energy?" Emily asked. "The company will survive," Alexander said confidently. "Nathan and I will restructure it, focusing on sustainable technologies. The ill-gotten patents will be returned to their rightful owners, including your father's algorithm." Emily's throat tightened with emotion. "My father could be exonerated." "With proper legal representation, his conviction should be overturned," Alexander confirmed. "I've already retained the best appellate attorneys in the country." As dawn broke over the eastern horizon, casting golden light through the jet's windows, Emily felt the weight of years beginning to lift. Justice wouldn't restore all that had been lost, but it offered a path forward, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of destruction. Alexander's hand found hers, fingers intertwining naturally. "When this is over," he said softly, "I'd like to discuss the possibility of a partnership." "Business partnership?" Emily asked, though she understood his meaning. A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "That too, if you're interested. Your investigative skills would be valuable to Reed Energy's new compliance division." Their eyes held a conversation beyond words, acknowledgement of the connection that had formed between them, unexpected but undeniable. "I'll consider it," Emily replied, her own smile emerging. "After all, I do have experience with high stakes negotiations." 3 months later, the autumn sun bathed the grounds of the newly established Walker Reed Foundation in warm light. The red desert landscape of Sedona provided a dramatic backdrop for the modern building constructed beside Alexander's estate, a center dedicated to supporting victims of corporate crime and providing educational opportunities for disadvantaged youth. Emily stood at the podium addressing the gathered crowd of journalists, corporate leaders, and government officials. Today marks not just the opening of this foundation, but a new chapter in corporate accountability. From personal tragedy, we've created a force for positive change. In the front row, Jonathan Walker, recently released from prison after his conviction was overturned, watched his daughter with pride. Beside him sat Alexander and Nathan Reed, their father's empty seat a stark reminder of William Reed's ongoing federal trial. "The investigation into the Mirage Palace network continues," Emily continued, "but already dozens of victims have been identified and compensated. What began as a search for personal justice has evolved into a mission that will impact countless lives." After the ceremony, Emily found Alexander waiting in the garden that connected the foundation building to his home. Their home now, though. She maintained her own apartment in Phoenix for when independence called. "Impressive speech," he said, meeting her with a kiss. His cane was rarely needed now, except on particularly tiring days. "You didn't mention your mother." Emily's smile held both sadness and peace. "The investigation continues. Mitchell finally revealed the location where they..." She paused, still, unable to speak directly of her mother's fate, where the evidence might be found. Alexander wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "We'll find the truth, Emily, however long it takes." "I know," she replied, leaning into his strength, "but I've realized something important. Finding justice for my mother matters enormously, but so does creating something positive from all this pain." They walked slowly through the garden, autumn flowers blooming improbably in the desert climate, a metaphor for their own unlikely flourishing amidst harsh circumstances. "Have you decided about the Reed Energy position?" Alexander asked. "The compliance division needs a director with your unique perspective." Emily had been considering the offer for weeks, weighing independence against influence. "I'll accept on one condition. Name." "To complete autonomy," she stated firmly. "No board interference, not even from you or Nathan." Alexander smiled. "Already approved unanimously. Nathan insisted on it, actually." "Then yes," Emily agreed. "Corporate watchdog wasn't exactly my childhood dream, but it feels right." As sunset painted the desert in shades of fire, they sat on the terrace where they had first begun to trust each other. So much had changed since then, External circumstances, certainly, but more fundamentally, each of them had transformed. Alexander had reclaimed not just physical mobility, but emotional openness. Emily had transitioned from survival mode to purposeful living. "I never thought I'd be grateful for losing a poker game," Emily mused, watching the stars emerge. Alexander laughed softly. "I never thought I'd be grateful for corporate conspiracy and family betrayal. Yet, here we are. Building something new from broken pieces," Emily agreed. Their relationship had evolved naturally from mutual respect to deeper attachment, then to love, not despite their complicated beginning, but because of it. The foundation they built, together, both literal and emotional, stood on hard-won truth and shared purpose. In the vast desert night, under countless stars, Emily found Alexander's hand and held it firmly. Their pasts would always be part of them, the losses, the betrayals, the fight for justice, but the future stretched before them with possibilities neither could have imagined in their darkest hours. What had begun with a desperate gamble had transformed into their greatest triumph, a covenant of freedom and redemption, stronger than any contract, more valuable than any fortune. The end, dear listeners. We hope Emily and Alexander's journey from deception to redemption has touched your hearts. For more emotionally rich stories exploring complex relationships and the triumph of justice, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives. Find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique stories that explore life's complexities and the power of human connection. Don't miss our upcoming content.